Welcome to Evolutionary Computer Vision. I am Gustavo Lague, your course instructor. This tutorial is about my book Evolutionary Computer Vision, published with Springer at the Natural Computing Series, and is part of the Genetic and Evolutionary Computation Conference virtually held in Cancun, Mexico. I am professor at the Center for Scientific Research and Higher Education at Ensenada, a public research center sponsored by the National Council for Science and Technology of Mexico. It is located in the city of Ensenada, Baja California, and specializes in earth science, oceanography, and applied physics. I lead the Evolution project, a research project devoted to the study of the new discipline of evolutionary computer vision, where we study computer vision, evolutionary computing, robotics, and artificial intelligence. The project is based at GECCO, and we have a fully equipped laboratory with multiple workstations, a 6 degrees of freedom robotic manipulator, 2 humanoid robots, 1 mobile robot, and several cameras and photogrammetric equipment. Among the many accomplishments, we probably say that we have graduated 10 PhDs working at different universities in Mexico and United States, more than 30 masters working in the private sector and universities, and we have national and international collaboration with universities and research centers in Spain, Italy, France, USA, and Mexico. The book is about a new research area named Evolutionary Computer Vision, for short ECV, that is at the intersection of two major research fields of artificial intelligence known as computer vision and evolutionary computing. From a practical standpoint, ECV is devoted to the design of software and hardware solutions useful for solving difficult computer vision problems. This figure shows a picture intended to illustrate our ability as humans to perceive visual information with apparent ease. Indeed, it generates an immediate vivid experience in your mind when you observe it. However, the goal of imitating or replicating this phenomenon within a computer or robot is still daunting, but at the same time stimulating to many computer vision scientists. The natural visual system combines a number of interrelated organs that work as a coherent entity for several purposes. Thus, the conscious sense for light perception performed in our brain is able to interpret the scene in this photograph and correctly identify the bee and the flower. An image is defined here as the graph of a function. In this case, the function is physically produced by the light acting on the scene, which is recorded on the light-sensitive material of the camera. The main aim of this book is to provide a reference that serves as an introduction to the new field of evolutionary computer vision. The book is meant to be a starting point for understanding and investigating the literature of this exciting field, as well as serving the community of research students, academics, scientists, and professionals. The book is composed of a collection of select methods that have been developed mainly at the Evolution Laboratory, which can be considered as representative problems in this new field. The goal of the book is to show an approach where theory and practice are well balanced to solve each problem. In this way, the elaboration of a scientific theory requires 3 stages: to state the theory, to express concepts in mathematical or computational terms, to perform experiments that confirm the theory. Reflection on these 3 points lead us to propose a methodology that allow us to develop research projects systematically. Thus, this methodology is based on the scientific method that can be summarized in the following 2 stages. The general working method consisting of 5 steps, and after identifying the main problems within the research subject, we use 3 steps for solving each problem. As can be appreciated, our approach is comprehensive and emphasizing the combination of theory and practice. The book is divided in 4 major parts. Part 1 is devoted to the introduction to the introductory concepts that are essential for understanding the material present in subsequent chapters. In this tutorial, I will talk about the history of computer vision and its connection with evolution. Briefly explain through the analysis of major disciplines involved in the art, science, and technology of seeing machines. We will focus on current research conducted at the Evolution Laboratory, while talking about also about uh, uh, past research that is included in the book, such as the camera placement problem, interest points detection, feature extraction, and image recognition and classification. But what is vision? Vision is the sense of sight, which is considered as the most complex of all senses, despite the limited knowledge about the inner workings of the brain. Vision is considered as one of the final frontiers in science because its understanding relies on deciphering how individual cells give rise to complex operations that create the whole visual experience. In this tutorial, we'll briefly review some recent work about a new methodology called brain programming, which is a genetic programming-like methodology in combination with neuroscientific theories. The human eye is said to be the organ of vision or of light sensitivity, which allows organisms to assimilate information from the environment. The human eye is an organ that reacts to light for several purposes. In combination with the brain, it is said to exhibit conscious behavior due to its many components and functions that allow awareness of the environment through light perception and vision, with the goal of accomplishing tasks such as object recognition and perception of them. Thus, the act of seeing starts when the eye focuses on an image of its surroundings onto a light-sensitive membrane in the back of the eye, called the retina. The retina is actually the first part of the brain that serves as the transducer for the conversion of light into neuronal signals. This figure provides a simple sketch of the main component of the human eye and the brain. However, the real difficulty of understanding vision resides in the information capability of the human brain. Since ancient times, men have been amazed by the impression left by the sense of sight, and the desire to recreate that process is indelible in the history of mankind. Nowadays, vision is investigated by 3 different schools within the scientific community. Neurophysiologists attempt to understand how sensory and neural mechanisms of biological systems function. Perceptual psychologists try to understand the psychological issues governing the task of perception, and computer vision scientists investigate the computational and algorithmic issues associated with image acquisition, processing, and understanding. The scientific approach is important as it implies the laws of mathematics, physics, and biology, as well as the knowledge of their practical application. However, the art in the study of vision should not be overlooked. Good results can only be produced from suitable images, so painting, photography, and videography are skills which must not be dismissed lightly. In the book, a brief survey about the history of vision is presented from artistic, mathematical, and photographic viewpoints. The earliest form of art that has survived is often referred to as cave art or parietal art. This figure provides an example of humans and animals larger than life-size painted on walls in Baja California. The wall of Cueva Pintada is typical of the ancient painting of the Sierra de San Francisco in central Baja California. Artists from the Renaissance, in particular Leon Battista Alberti, said that the first necessity of a painter was to know geometry, and that such mathematical knowledge would likely improve the structure of nature. I hope that this viewpoint is still relevant and very important to evolutionary computer scientists that wants to solve computer vision problems. Deuter introduced the word perspective to describe this technique based on the Latin verb meaning to see through, and he illuminated the technique by a series of woodcuts that are well known in computer vision. In fact, this image is the cover of a very well-known book written by Olivier Fougeras. The Dürer woodcut above shows an artist holding his eye at a fixed position to study perspective and the effect of foreshortening. In order to facilitate the process of reproducing the location of points where the lines of sight pierce the screen, he has divided the screen and paper into little squares. Of course, if the screen is tilted or placed closer to or further away from the eye, the size of the cross-section changes. However, all resulting images are always relayed to each other by its distance or due to the change in the observer's position. This law could be explained in mathematical terms with the concept of perspective projection, such as homography. This figure gives a timeline of the greatest people of projective geometry from the standpoint of art and mathematics. Nowadays, geometry is widely seen as the study of shapes and the transformations that preserve those shapes. Until the mid-19th century, classical Greek geometry was regarded by all in the early modern world as the true geometry of space. Since then, it has evolved dramatically, and now all computer vision scientists have adopted a new philosophy of geometry called the Euclidean view geometry. After Euclidean geometry, whole new geometries were discovered, and one way of classifying geometries was suggested by Christian Klein, who developed a program, the Erlangen program, that regards a geometry as a space together with a group of transformations of that shape, of that space. Excuse me. The properties of figures that are not altered by any transformation in the group are the geometrical properties. In fact, as Klein was keen to stress, most geometries are examples of projective geometry with some extra conditions. And he even showed that projective geometry was almost the most basic geometry. Today, this tenet is basic in understanding the geometry of vision. It is very likely that some of today's scientists, such as Olivier Fougeras and Roger Moore, are regarded as pioneers in the use of projective geometry in computer vision. We have reviewed the history of visual representation from artistical and mathematical standpoints. It is known that the development of pictorial image was long and tedious, and important projects were commissioned to professional painters, thus making the overall process very expensive and affordable for only a few distinguished persons. This situation gave rise to the need to develop novel ways of creating image. Two major principles were required in order to discover a permanent way to depict a scene on a screen using a fast and accurate process. Indeed, the concept for physically creating an image can be traced back to Aristotle, who understood the optical principle of the pinhole camera, also known as the camera obscura or dark chamber. Here the image shows the world's first camera on display during a photography exhibition held by the French government in Beijing, China. Photography is an automatic process that recreates what is achieved by the eye, and with it a new era of pictorial representation was born. This new technology has been applied in all kinds of human activities, from science and art to military and entertainment. However, a fundamental question arises from the idea of reversing the photographic process. so that you can completely recreate the visual experience. In this way, the development of a new discipline called photogrammetry was axiomatic after the invention of photography. The French inventor Nicephore Niepce is considered as the inventor of photography, although Niepce called his process heliography, which literally means sound writing. This image shows early surviving camera photographs. The first one took in 1826 or 27 by Niepce is known as View from the Window at Le Grand. And the second one is the first photograph with people known as Boulevard du Temple, both taken with a daguerreotype. The daguerreotype was a kind of process invented by Niepce. After the success in producing the world's first permanent photograph, Niepce started a partnership with Louis Daguerre in order to achieve a faster way of creating printing plates. The collaboration lasted only a few years because Niepce died of a stroke. In 1839, Daguerre announced that he had invented a process called daguerreotype, using silver on a copper plate. The French government bought the patent and immediately made it public domain. However, Daguerre secured a British patent on his own process, making it illegal for people in Britain to practice his process without a license. By that time, a British inventor, Fox Talbot, has succeeded in producing with his camera oscura some negative paper pictures from which many positive prints could be made through the use of gallic acid for developing the latent image. Talbot named his invention the calotype or Talbotype process, for which he obtained a patent in 1841. Talbot's negative-positive process eventually succeeded as the basis for almost all 19th and 20th century photographs. Here we can see the daguerreotype, the first photograph with people known as Boulevard du Temple, in contrast with an image taken with a modern Canon Mark II. It is remarkable what it is impressed in those images. In the present, we can uh, compare the feelings of the people in the 19th century with those that we have in today's cinema with the technologies that amaze us. The image on the left is the world's oldest surviving aerial photo. This image is titled Boston as the Eagle and the Wild Goose See It. This is representative of a technology that was incorporated to hot air balloons. The image on the right is a depiction of the process. Photography is an automatic process that recreates what is achieved by the eye, and with it a new era of pictorial representation was born. This new technology has been applied in all kinds of human activities, from science and art to military and entertainment. However, a fundamental question arises from the idea of reversing the photographic process so that you can completely recreate the visual experience. The development of photogrammetry was axiomatic after the invention of photography, as we mentioned. Photogrammetry refers to the art, science, and technology of obtaining reliable information about physical objects and the environment through the process of recording, measuring, and interpreting photogrammetric images and patterns of electromagnetic radiant energy and other phenomena. Photogrammetry can be interpreted as measuring graphically by means of light. Computer vision is a discipline whose first theoretical basis was formulated in the 1960s. There are numerous books about the subject, and today the most suitable book for learning computer vision is that of Zelinsky, since it includes the most updated introduction to the discipline. However, the book of David Mark in 1982 can be considered as the one that truly established the direction of research in the last few decades. The book Evolutionary Computer Vision has the aim of integrating evolutionary computing into computer vision. In the book, we summarize David Marr's philosophy divided in two main parts. In the first part, David Marr talks about computational theory, representation and algorithm, and hardware implementation. The second aspect is related to the representation, the primary sketch, the 2.5 sketch, and the 3D model. However, a different view, because the problem was unsolved and is still unsolved, can be seen by something that is called goal-driven vision. The idea that vision should be goal-driven has been explored by a number of methodological proposals such as active, purposive, animate, behavioral, cognitive, and evolutionary vision. Evolutionary computer vision has its first seeds planted in a special issue edited by Olage and Friends in 2006 with the aim of unifying the group of researchers whose main interests were at the intersection of computer vision and evolutionary computing. The aim was to bring out a sample of representative works rather than establish the subject of study in order to start the creation of this new research area. A second special issue was edited by Cagnoni and Friends with the same aim. The goal of this book is to establish the subject of ECV in terms of a theory found on well-known concepts and methodological grounds that serve to describe the phenomenology of a purposeful visual system using a goal-direct framework. Hence, purposivism or teleological theory is used as the model that refers to the notion applied to a human or an animal, and in this case to a robot, where actions or behaviors are based on goals and purpose, like gazing at an object of interest. In this way, the human visual system is the base example of the purposive approach, where a group of elements, physiological parts forming a complex whole, are adapted to achieve a purpose or end. In the way, the visual cortex within the brain is responsible for solving recognition and visual attention tasks. In particular, the purposive theory or teleological framework approach has been very useful for the research conducted at the Evolution Laboratory, especially when one is attempting to achieve top-notch results. Evolution is based on three fundamental truths or hypotheses regarding species. Species are comprised of individuals that vary ever so slightly from each other with respect to their many traits. Species that have a tendency to exponentially increase their numbers over generations. This tendency is held in check by limited resource as well as disease, predation, and so on, which creates a constant struggle for survival among the members of a species. It is possible to enumerate four consequences of the truths or hypotheses that give rise to natural selections. First, some individuals will, by change, have variations that give them a slight advantage in this struggle. Variations that allow more efficient or better access to resource, greater resistance to disease, greater success of avoiding predation, and so on. This individual will tend to survive better and leave more offspring. Offspring tend to inherit the variation of their parents. Therefore, favorable variation will tend to be passed on more frequently than others, a tendency that we call natural selection. Finally, three extrapolation from these concepts will result in the extinction of species. Over time, especially in a slowly changing environment, this process will cause species to change. Given a long enough period of time, descendant population of an ancestor species will differ enough to be classified as different species, a process capable of indefinite iteration. There are in addition forces that encourage both divergence among descendants population and the elimination of intermediate varieties. Nowadays, evolution is considered as the theory that explains the fossil record and current distribution of species. Nevertheless, there are philosophically problematic elements in the theory that can be summarized in the following core problems of Darwinism. The core problems of Darwinism are the following: the role of probability and chance as a factor in evolutionary theory, and the theory's apparently probabilistic nature, the nature, power, and scope of selection, the question of considering selection and adaptation explanation as teleological, the ontological and epistemological status of species concept, the question of whether evolutionary change is invariably slow and gradual. Darwin defined natural selection as the preservation of variations that happen to be beneficial. Darwin describes consistently natural selection as the key mechanisms for preserving advantageous traits and eliminating harmful or unsuitable characteristics. The variation of such advantageous traits arise as a matter of chance, but in relation to the fact that preserved characteristics are selected according to natural selection. Fisher's fundamental theorem, the rate of increase in the meaning of fitness of any organism at any time ascribable to natural selection acting through change in gene frequency is exactly equal to its genetic variance in fitness at that time. Teleology is a philosopher's word that is central to our exposition of Darwin's theory of natural selection. Darwin constantly used terms such as final cause, end, purpose, end for which, and good for which. The appearance of teleology originates from the idea that animals and plants have the adaptations that they do because some benefit or advantage to the organisms is provided by those adaptations. Selection-based teleology is different from the concept of emergence of order from chaos and classical teleological explanations such as divine design and vitalism, but is in accordance with Aristotle's concept of final cause. Darwin's teleological explanation refers to general select types of possible outcomes based on the principle of natural selection. Evolutionary theory as an explanation of the origin of species is in direct relationship with Aristotle's idea of final cause or telos, which is defined as the purpose, end, aim, or goal of something, and could be represented without any form of deliberation, consciousness, or intelligence in general. A type of outcome is a final cause only if it demonstrates why there is a bias towards instance of that type. Aristotle's teleology is internal or immanent because it resides in the organism form, which is a cause since except for the organism form, none of the parts that contribute to the organism's life will come to be or exist. Aristotle's teleology is a genuine alternative to mechanicalism. As a grade published in Nature in 1874, Darwin's great service to natural science in bringing back to it teleology so that instead of morphology versus teleology, we shall have morphology wed to teleology. Darwin quickly responded, "What you say of teleology please me especially, and I do not think anyone else has ever noticed the point. I have always said you were the man to hit the nail on the head." Later, Darwin's son and biographer Francis Darwin made the following statement: "One of the greatest services rendered by my father to the study of natural history is the revival of teleology." And himself follows this with a passage by Thomas H. Huxley that can be read from the Darwin Correspondence Project. The most remarkable service to the philosophy of biology rendered by Mr. Darwin is the reconciliation of teleology and morphology, and the explanation of the facts of both which his view offers. ECB represents a new research avenue toward the design of autonomous systems with visual abilities, using as the main paradigm the art, theory, and technology of evolutionary computing. The proposal follows a goal-driven methodology, which is the core of a new way of developing computer vision methods. Computer vision is above all an applied science, and hence the usability of the proposed techniques for solving visual major problems is of major importance. Typical hardware and software requirements include high-resolution still video cameras, stereoscopic cameras, as well as the host computer used in typical computer vision and photogrammetric systems. This image shows some cameras like the Canon Mark III stereoscopic camera and a machine vision camera. Computer vision applications are divided in three main parts, and some others are listed also in the book. Early visual representation refers to feature extraction and matching and registration process. Intermediate visual representation refers to image segmentation and clustering, image classification, video and motion analysis, for example. While high-level vision examples could be sensor planning and calibration, object recognition, visual learning, face recognition, and modeling. So others are, for example, medical imaging, earth science. In the book, we give some reference to where to publish and look for information regarding books, conferences, journals, videos, and the internet. Next, we will briefly review the new paradigm we are introducing called brain programming. In this paradigm, we are trying to tackle two of the main questions when you are trying to decipher the information within an image. And these are related to the main aspects of the human brain. The questions here are: where is the object and what is that makes the object? So you need to answer the where and what questions. So given an image I that belongs to an image database from a set, the representation for each object in the database, you need to the task that we need to solve is the task of object recognition, expressed as the search of a minimum expression where the function that is applied to the image is a function that returns a representation consistent with the object in the image. And the criteria is a metric of this mapping. The neuroscientific theories regarding this new proposal can be traced back to the study of Ramon y Cajal. But in contrast to what is commonly seen in the computer science community, we are not using neural networks. Instead, we are going to use genetic programming. But first, we'll review the main works from the neuroscientific standpoint regarding computer algorithms. Huberly Wiesel in 1959 and 1962 discovered that in some part, in fact, in the occipital part, you can record the stimulus orientation of an animal that is observing some input. Later, Treisman and Helade Mishkin, Urgenleider, Mako developed some theories about object discrimination and landmark discrimination. And from these, there are a whole level of theories by prominent scientists who gives accounts to this to answer this kind of question of where are the perceived objects or what are the perceived objects. From these being inspired models, some psychological theories and their computational models were developed, and the computer science people developed a number of approaches. For example, David Marr theory of sketches that we review, or the very well-known work of Fukushima about the neocognitron. There are other works that talks about geons as a way to identify objects, or the work of Ullman and Soloviev that tries to recreate some electronic aspects of how the information process could be processed in a hierarchical way. Recent Hubert Pollo went into the Ashmax algorithm and using the complex of maximum response. So you start from simple to complex cells to composite simple and composite complex cells until we obtain some view-tuned cells. And this is extended by Serre and friends for color image. Much allow works in the process of invariance. In summary, we can say that the proposal that we are studying in the Evolution laboratory could be seen as two different aspects. Normally, traditionally, people follows a data-driven model. This is very appealing because of the huge amount of data. However, we follow a theory that we call a functional model. We believe that the input image can be represented instead of by the number of patches. It can be the information can be processed, consider a number of mathematical of computational functions. So image properties are considered as function of the scene, in contrast with a traditional model where the properties are function of the data in the image. Remember, the image is a function from a three-dimensional space. The idea is that this information travels around several hierarchies, and the idea is at each level we will find a function across several dimensions. Dimension is understood by the information travels to detect orientation, color, form, direction of motion, binocular disparity. And this information travels separate in parallel through the whole information process. And it arrives in later stage in the hierarchy to make a consensus, to make visual attention or the recognition of the object using a descriptor. Traditional models follows uh, follows the image enters and it separates in several Gabor filters. Then it uses the max label, and after some invariance, this is combo with a dictionary of patches to recreate the descriptors at several dimensions. The idea is that we can substitute all these patches by a number of elementary functions. In this way, we simplify the overall process while still preserving the represent the represent the representation. Note that we don't have an information in the kind of patches, but we have an information in the kind of functions. So the idea, the analogy of the artificial visual cortex is that the image goes into several dimensions. With this, we compute several visual maps, we compute some invariants, and then we obtain some conspicuity maps at different dimensions. From this, we compute some mental maps, and then we integrate these, selecting the n maxima to obtain a descriptor that will be used for the classification. This represents the computational model that we are following, that is the analogy of the biological model. The artificial visual cortex structure follows the idea of the difference labels that goes from the input image to the B1 area, B2, B4, and inferotemporal cortex. The motivation is how to obtain the optimum operators to extract image characteristics and achieve description. Traditionally, in evolutionary computing, the idea, the first words were related to some kind of objects, like in computer graphics or in the object theory of geons. These building blocks, the idea was to change with a simple representation, try to select the building blocks. In our approach, the building blocks are the mathematical functions that process the information that is received by the retina. So the analogy is that we have a set of functions and terminals, and then we are going to describe each of these mathematical operators, visual operators, with a program represented like in the GP process. All these are merged to create the phenotype that makes the representation and provides the functionality of the visual root in the visual cortex, in the artificial visual cortex. So brain programming as an evolutionary algorithm can be seen as let's see, we can see it not as particular programs like in GP, but some programs that are merged, embedded within a more complex program that is hardwired. So we have a database, and this database is used for the evaluation to try to select the best subprograms that goes into the artificial visual cortex. So we use common mutation and crossover operators to create the new population, and this is iterated as in a regular GP algorithm. We can observe here, after a cross-validation of a simple problem of airplane versus background, that we can achieve perfect solutions. And the solutions to detect or to solve the problem can discover problems that are very simple. This is an example of the best program that was solved, that was found by the system, and we can observe how it extracts the maximum, place it exactly where the airplane is. Okay, I would like to thank you for your attention, and with this I cover the first part of the tutorial. Thanks.